I'll see you guys in the dark.
In 2018, I embarked on my first ever big solo international backpacking adventure through Southeast Asia and Oceania. As a backpacker, I gave up so much of my comfort to save money. I would stay in the cheapest hotels that I could find, only eat street food, and would wash my clothing in a sink when it was absolutely needed. I was cheap, and well, when you are cheap, the majority of the time you really get what you pay for. I often stayed in hotels that had no windows, rooms without locks, bugs crawling around, dirty bed sheets, ongoing construction next door at all hours of the day, rooms with 16 to 20 people in bunk beds crammed into a closed space, and had bathrooms that were not always maintained. However, my worst hotel experience was actually the first hotel that I have ever been in on my backpacking trip. I was exhausted. I had arrived at the hostel in Little India, Singapore, after 11 p.m. I practically crawled up 2 flights of stairs with my backpack. Took me a couple of tries to find the correct room with it being so dark, and my eyes did not want to stay open. When I finally found my room and my assigned bed, I threw myself into bed with my clothes still on and passed out cold from exhaustion. The very next morning, I took my time waking up, getting myself somewhat unpacked. I grabbed my toiletries and travel towel, walked down the hallway to find the bathroom. I needed a shower pretty badly. I walked into the bathroom. I did a happy dance when I saw one of the 2 shower stalls unoccupied. I immediately staked my claim, locked myself inside, turned around, and shuddered in complete disgust. My eyes scanned the entire shower from top to bottom. There was mold and grime all over the walls, and shower head as well. A large spider web and a spider hung in the left corner of the ceiling above my shower. The drain was full of mold, dirt, and hair. You have no idea how happy I was that I had my flip-flops on. I turned back around to the shower door to find no hooks, or at least any functional hooks. Luckily, there was a ledge for me to put my toiletry bag. I quickly stripped down, threw my clothes over the door, walked over to the shower knob. The shower was actually a decent size, but the puke green walls did not make it any more inviting. It took me at least a minute to figure out how to turn the shower on. The instant the cold water hit me, I squirmed and let out a little squeak. A cold shower. Hooray. I slowly rinsed my body in cold water, reached for my bag on the ledge. I screamed so loud that I bet the entire hallway had heard me. There were worms, ants, and spiders crawling all over the ledge and around my bag. I almost vomited at this sight. I squatted down in the shower just in case I was to vomit, and I wished that I hadn't looked down. I saw even more worms and bugs crawling down the walls and in the shower corners. I felt so gross and wanted to scream again. I stood up so fast and grabbed my shampoo and body wash, then took the fastest shower that I think I have ever taken in my life. I turned off the cold water, dried myself off, and quickly put my clothes back on. I closed up my bag, rinsed the bugs crawling on it with the shower water. Ew. I unlocked the door and got the hell out of that shower. I was shaking, and I still wanted to vomit. My shoes squeaked all the way to the sinks. I set my bag down again, immediately picked it back up. The counter was full of more bugs and worms, and the sinks had hair and bug infested as well. I threw up in my mouth that time. I shuddered and saw the look of disgust in the mirror. I held my bag in between my legs and fished out my toothbrush and my toothpaste. I turned on the tap water and rinsed my toothbrush. I watched every single bug crawling around my sink and all the flies on the mirror. I had barely brushed my teeth before I was already rinsing it out. I removed my bag from between my legs and quickly squeaked out of the bathroom. Never again, never again, never again, I shuddered, all the way down the hallway and back into my room. I checked my toiletry bag before I set it down on my bed and shook with disgust. I laughed to myself, remembering how much I had paid for the hostel stay. You really get what you pay for. The fact that the shower had a lock on it was the best part of my entire morning. This story isn't about me, but of my mother who used to work at a hotel in Washington, D.C. back in the 90s. She was a housekeeper and a maid. She needed money because she was a refugee from Vietnam. Even though she didn't know much English at the time, she knew enough to by at her job. And all the other staff and hotel guests loved her because of how sweet she was. Because of this, anytime high-profile guests, such as the Backstreet Boys, would stay at the hotel, the manager always sent my mom to clean the room since she was good at it. Anyways, one day a guest had came in. We'll refer to him as Mr. M because I don't know his real name. He checked into their most expensive suite. As usual, the manager told my mom to take care of his room. As she got there was a "Do Not Disturb" sign, so she told the manager that she would come back later. What was weird was that no one was ever allowed in his room. The man stayed there for over a month, and not one time did he let a staff come in to clean. However, he paid a lot, and he gave a warm welcome every time he passed a staff member or a housekeeper, so no one paid him any attention. Then one day, people didn't see him anymore. They assumed that he had checked out, even though the receptionist had no account of any of this. Since it had been so long since the room was cleaned, and the "Do Not Disturb" sign wasn't on the door anymore, the manager told my mom to go check it out and try to clean up what she could. As she got to the floor and unlocked the door to the room, a disturbing smell had hit her. She couldn't figure out what it was, but she continued to survey the room, which was disgustingly messy. Her words were that it looked like someone had thrown a rave, even though no other guest seemed to have ever gone into that room besides Mr. M. It had looked like Mr. M had deserted the place without telling anyone. My mom was still shocked by the smell, so she tried to track it down. As she followed the smell, she could tell that it was coming from the hotel room closet. When she opened up that closet, there was nothing but a cardboard box on the ground from which the smell was resonating. My mother's first instinct was to open up the box to see what it was, and clean and throw it out. When she opened up the box, what she saw scared her to this day. It was the rotting, decomposing head of a young woman, chopped off. My mother immediately screamed and got out of there. She fainted in the elevator. Once she woke up, cops were everywhere, and the hotel was like a CSI scene. The manager told her that Mr. M wasn't his real name, and he used a fake credit card to check in. The head of the woman was identified to be like a sex worker. I don't know much more or any nitty-gritty details, but I'm sure one can look it up on the internet for more information. Needless to say, my mom quit the job that very same day. This is not my story, but I am involved in a way. Several years ago, my college roommate, we'll call her E, worked as the night manager for a newly built hotel. As was par of the course, I would often bring coffee in around 1 to 2 a.m. and chat for a little while. One night I showed up to find E sitting at the desk, shaking her head, looking completely perplexed. Allegedly, she had just checked in what would be described as a doppelganger of our other roommate, M, who was alike down the same height, hairstyle, eye color, and southern accent, odd as we lived in the north. E tried with the new guest, and to show her a picture of M on her phone, but was rebuffed several times. We both chalked it up to a coincidence, as we knew M was visiting her parents, and we went on to enjoy our coffee. Shortly after 2, I decided to head home. It wasn't until around 2:30 when I pulled into our garage that I checked my phone to see a series of text messages from E to M and me at 2:17 a.m. Stop, not funny. You guys suck. What the hell? Naturally, I was confused, and I called her back. This is when things got weird, and E sounded hysterical on the phone. Apparently, M and I, in the same clothes that I wore earlier, had been standing at the end of the main hallway, staring at her. E thought that this was a joke, and kept calling out to no response. Eventually, the front desk phone rang, and in the time that it took to answer it, we both had disappeared. I calmed her down over the phone, and the next morning we talked through all of the possibilities, trying to rationalize what she saw. The guest who looked like M did come back to the front desk later that morning to inquire about some services, and much to E's surprise. Looked only vaguely similar to our roommate. The only thing that scares me to this day, and that I have never told, is when I got into our house, the kitchen clock was stuck on 2:17, and directly next to it sat a photo of M and I smiling that I had only developed that afternoon. Still no explanations, and nothing ever weird happened at that hotel again. But it does make me still uneasy to this day, just thinking about it. It was 10 p.m. in a border town in eastern Zambia. All the hotel rooms are fully booked. We found ourselves in a closed restaurant of a fully booked hotel on the edge of town with two men. One of the men must have sensed our desperation, as he suggested this hotel might have something. The other guy said that it wasn't up to our standards, to which we replied, "We have no standards." They finally relented and took us to a room that was available in the staff quarters. We walked in the dark towards a small building at the back of the hotel. Men were coming in and out of the building, and a man standing outside was handing each client a small package. It was probably about 1.5 inches each square. Matt tried to tell me that they were tea bags. We both knew what they really were. The room was one of 4 inside of that building. The sheets were crumpled in a heap on a single bed. The guy who took our money made an effort at making the bed, while apologizing for the wet spot in the middle. He blamed it on the hole in the roof. There was no hole in that roof. The pink satin pillowcase added a piece of class to the experience. We paid full price for this room with a lock, but got to use it for the whole night. All night, cars pulled up outside of the building, and the clients made use of the square packages in one of the other rooms. I didn't get much sleep. I was wearing every piece of clothing that I owned, and managed to only place my right hip bone onto the bed. I reminded myself all night that most STIs can't live outside of the body, and our vaccinations were up to date. Matt, he had slept like a baby. We learned 2 valuable lessons from this experience. If you arrive in a border town on payday, book your room online first. We actually have some standards, and this room was well below them. Well, I have standards anyways. Not sure about Matt. I worked in a hotel in Torbay, which is essentially the #1 hotel holiday destination for elderly people in Britain. We had a blind man, he will be called John for this story, who would stay with us at least once a month. So John, obviously being blind, would always need help to and from his room, and me being the head porter, I would always go and help him. He was generous with his tips. One day, it was around 6 p.m., and it's dinner time. So knowing John will need help, I go up to his room to assist him. I had known John for a long time, and he would always know when I would be coming up, and would leave his door unlocked just for us, the porters, to save him walking to the door to open it and find his way through that room. So I go up to his room, as always. But this time, John wasn't quite ready, and was midway through one of the most disturbing things that I have ever seen. He had a plastic bag filled with Vaseline, which he had fashioned into a fleshlight. He had music blaring out from his radio, and he was wearing a bra and fishnet stockings. I walk into the room with my normal friendly manner, but the music was so loud he didn't hear the door open, and carried on horrified. I left the room and waited for a while laughing and crying at the sight at what I had just seen, until I heard the music stop playing, which was when I knocked on the door to ask if he needed some help. John had invited me in after a minute or two of saying that he was getting changed into some more comfortable clothing. But as I walked in, I saw the bra on the floor, and the fishnet stuffed in a plastic bag. As if this wasn't enough, as I walked him down, I noticed on his tinted glasses that he had some of his cum on the lens. This is the first time that I have told anyone this story. It may not be dramatic or scary to some people, but I just wanted to share this experience anyways. I got a job at a hotel downtown from where I live. I have never worked in the hotel industry before, so I had no idea what to expect. The time between applying for the job and being hired was less than 24 hours, which made me pretty nervous. But I had been looking for several months, and I couldn't find anything, so I thought that I would just take a chance. This hotel is about 150 years old, has plenty of character. Behind the front desk, there are places where the wallpaper has torn away, revealing a psychedelic wallpaper from what I can only guess to be the 70s. We're talking bright pink, neon green, hookah-induced vision type of wallpaper. The walls in the upper floors are painted bright orange and yellow, and the hallways are narrow enough to give you a shining kind of feel, but I'll elaborate on that later. The manager is a young Chinese man in his mid-20s, only 5 years older than me. The man who owns the building is also Chinese, and literally a walking stereotype. The owner is friendly and kind to all the employees, but he's also rich enough that he doesn't have to really care if the hotel isn't up to par. I also had that idea that he may have one of those run-down shopping centers downtown, so this might explain the less than 5-star quality of the hotel. Probably about a 3.5 star, in my opinion. Some people describe the place as quaint, unique, full of character, while others describe it as outdated or disappointing. As a history enthusiast, I would agree that the place is full of character, but I also think the owner should be a little more concerned about keeping the place clean. There are a lot of problems in this hotel, including mice, broken toilets, falling ceiling tiles, leaks, and other maintenance nightmares. The fancier rooms on the upper floors have real fireplaces in them, so that adds to the risk of fires at the hands of careless guests. Mice are a common problem here, and I'm thankful that the guests don't have to see all the dusty traps filled with dead rodents in the basement. But by far, the most interesting aspect of the hotel is that it's supposed to be haunted. There's 2 ghosts that have been reported in the building, as well as the adjoining pub next door. But then the hotel was first built. It was the reputation of being a complete dive. A lady now named Lady Churchill died in the hotel, and her spirit supposedly lingers in the haunted room 49. Guests will occasionally smell her perfume, or see her face in the mirror. One of the most frightening stories includes someone opening up the door only to have Lady Churchill fly at them in fury. On my first day, when the boss toured me around the hotel, he pointed out the haunted room to me. Lady Churchill has also been spotted at the fireplace in the pub, arguing with her boyfriend, the other resident ghost, Brady. Brady was stabbed to death on a basement stairwell. That stairwell is not in use anymore, as it leads from the street directly into the basement. Instead, it's used to store extra chairs and miscellaneous items. The light is never turned on, which adds more of a creep factor. My shift is during the day, from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Every morning when I come in, I have to check the entire hotel by myself, in search of homeless people sleeping in the back stairwell, or trying to get in through the basement. I'm not an intimidating person. I'm a short female, not physically fit, and too friendly for my own good. If I find someone hiding in the hotel, what was I supposed to do about it? I'm not sure which creeps me out more. The fact that I'm going around looking for people who shouldn't be there, or the idea that I have to walk around through dark and silent areas known to be haunted all by myself. My sweep of the hotel includes all 4 floors of the guest rooms, the kitchen, the back stairwell, the basement stairwell, and the basement itself. To give you some context, the back stairwell serves as a fire escape connecting all the floors together. It goes straight down to the street level. It's also cold and echoey in there, and as I said before, full of dead mice. The 4 floors for guest rooms and all of their overlook hotel glory are shaped like a square horseshoe, which means more than enough blind corners where creepy twins might suddenly appear. Lady Churchill's haunted room is at the end of the hall, around one of those blind corners. And yes, I do think about this every time I search the hotel. There is an elevator, and an interior stairwell, the one guests are supposed to use. Behind the elevator is this old connecting hallway that basically serves no purpose anymore. In the past, it may have been useful, but now it just serves as a secret passageway that goes behind the elevator and comes out the other end of the horseshoe. This hallway especially needs to be searched for homeless people, drunks, or people having sex. The basement by far is the creepiest part of the hotel. To get there, you can either take the elevator or go through the pub and down the stairs. I prefer to go through the pub because there are some fascinating black and white photos from when the hotel was first built, and I love to just look at them. It's also the best place to see the age of the brick foundation. Anyway, the basement is used for storing beer kegs, firewood, planter pots, housekeeping items, and maintenance tools, among other things. It's usually deserted. Now that I know the dark, unused basement stairwell is where Brady's spirit is supposed to be, I think I'll try to spend less time down there. This week is my second week of work, and my boss has put me on the afternoon and evening shift, so I can get a sense of what it's like in case I have to cover anybody in the future. Yesterday was my first late night shift, and in that time I learned a whole bunch of things that I didn't want to know from the lady that I worked with. This woman, let's call her Peggy, has been at the hotel for 14 years. She's seen all there is to see, and is well known for her stories. I've listened to some of these stories, and honestly part of me thinks she's full of shit, but the other part is going to cautiously believe her, on the off chance that it happens to be true. There are some things that I've learned about the hotel in the span of my shift. The man I'm replacing was not actually fired for chronic lateness, as my boss happened to have told me, but instead for sexual harassment. The head of housekeeping, a man that I get along with very well, is a friend of his. The day before, Peggy caught a drug addict rooting around in the private back office after hours. We looked over the security footage, and he was definitely searching for something. We now keep the office doors locked. There's 2 guests several years ago who stayed at the hotel, and the next day they robbed a jewelry store downtown and fled back to the hotel with everything that they had stolen. There was a massive police standoff on the roof, SWAT teams and all. There's a news article about it online. Otherwise, I never would have believed it. The bedrock of the hotel can be found in the boiler room. There's a slight gap that can be filled in on the top right corner that connects directly to the street. One time, Peggy came down to the boiler room to find a man half through the gap, head first, trying to get in because he wanted to know what was down there. That image terrifies me. In the span of that one night shift, an alarm went off in the basement. The police showed up at the pub, and a guest verbally abused the day staff over a non-existent shuttle to the hospital. No, not an ambulance, but a shuttle. Taking the bus was beneath them, I suppose. And at my bus stop, after my shift, a man was shooting up in public. My city happens to have a drug epidemic going on right now. The bus took half an hour to arrive. When I got off my stop, it was as foggy as Silent Hill. I felt as though I should be looking around for Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees. It happens to be October after all. That's one night shift down. I have another tonight, and one more the day after. It's amazing how different the hotel is after 3 p.m. Much louder, that's for sure. Thanks to the pub on the other side, and the bar on the other. Everyone that I've gotten to know during my first week of work has already gone home, leaving me with some drunks, strangers, and Peggy's crazy stories. One thing's for sure, after 3 nights of this, I'll never complain about getting up early ever again. I had worked night audit at this semi-nice hotel next to the airport. One night I got a call from this lady in room 204. She says that there was some arguing, a loud banging sound, and crying coming out of 206. I checked the computer. No one has checked into that room due to the maintenance issues. I called my supervisor to see what to do. She tells me to call on-site security, then follow them up with a key. But I decided to be the bigger man and go up there anyways. As we get off that elevator, we can hear the crying. It's pretty loud. My heart starts racing as we near that door. I hand the key over to the security guard. The next 5 minutes seem to happen in slow motion. He opens up the door, immediately flicks on the light. Keep in mind that room 206 is right there on the second floor. Only door in was by me, and this was like 3 a.m., possibly 4, and there was no one around. As we enter the room, the shower happens to be on. Steam is coming out from underneath the door. There's one lamp on in the room. It's really cold, and there is a lady in a red lacy bra, black panties, with red hair curled up, crying on the bed. She was facing away from us. As Frank, our security guard, approached her, he asked if everything was okay with her. She sort of just stopped crying, rolled over. When she did, a wave of horror came over me. She was super pale, covered in blood, and was just staring behind us. That's when we realized that the shower had stopped. The door was now open, There was a man that was about 6'5" standing in the doorway. As we turned around, cops had tased him, arrested him. Turns out he was a rapist who likes to hide in hotel rooms. He kidnaps women who stay there, cuts them open. To this day, I will never go back to that hotel again.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.